Welcome back, Gab Squad. Muffy here with another episode of Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy. Today, Habs and I are taking you along on our travel tales, the good, the bad, and the absolutely hilarious misadventures we've had while getting from point A to point B. Thanks for tuning in. Hey Habs, it's Muffy. Planes, trains, and automobiles. I definitely think that was a Gen X movie. Gosh, I've taken them all. Planes, trains, and automobiles. I just recently took a plane back from, first we went from Newark to San Diego via Charlotte. And that was, late April before all the troubles with the radar and the controllers at Newark Airport. So one thing about air travel is it's great when nothing goes wrong. But when something goes awry, boy, can that really stress me out. And I have to say, all the while I was out in the West Coast, I was wondering, am I going to get back? Is the radar going to fail when we're about to land? I just haven't had a lot of trust in air travel. And air travel in America, for a while now, if things don't go off right, you're pretty much screwed. Like we were in Orange County, California a couple of years ago, and we had a direct flight back and it got canceled. And oh my gosh, the scramble to get another flight and I think we had like premium economy and there was like no premium economy on that flight. So we had to just take whatever we could get, and it went through. It wasn't direct. It was going to go through Denver, and it just took forever. And it was just so kind of uncomfortable for what we had planned originally. And it was just like, this is awful. Like if your plane gets canceled in America, like it is so frustrating. So I was very fortunate that this past weekend when we flew back, the Friday, the day before, all flights have been canceled because of weather. That's another issue. So at all of the local airports, LaGuardia, JFK, and Newark. So Saturday was beautiful weather. For some reason, it all just kind of went off on time without any issues. So I was really grateful. So I like airplane travel. I like it particularly when RK, who does most of our flight arrangements, gets direct. And most of the time he does that. And he is very savvy at using points. And so we often get upgrades, or, we just fly as directly as possible wherever we're going in the world. And I'm really, really appreciative of that. Because gosh, things can go left, right, and center. We were so lucky going out to San Diego this past trip, because we went through Charlotte, and the Newark airport had so much air traffic. This is probably why the air traffic controllers and the radar is all wonky. I couldn't believe how much trouble there was. I mean, as far as just taking off, the line to take off was just so long. But so we were delayed like 45 minutes with just waiting to take off in this long line. Luckily, we did not miss our flight in Charlotte. What happened was we got there. We were in the same terminal because we were flying the same airline, I think American. And so we got in at like B12 gate, and our next flight to San Diego went out like B6. As we just walked over, and it was just beginning to board. So it was fantastic timing. How often does that happen? Okay, the other thing I have to say about plane travel is I have to be on the window seat. RK has learned this the very hardest way by putting me in things like the aisle or the middle seat at times when he, early on in our married life, did not think it really mattered. It actually really, really matters to me, because I get sick if I can't see like outside. Like if I feel like I'm in the plane and I'm just like, I can't see out or see anything outside of the aircraft itself, I get like kind of feeling sick. So I have to have that window. I know I have to disrupt everybody when I get out to go to the bathroom, but that's also another plus point, because you don't get disturbed. You're the one who disturbs others. That's a little trick. But I have to have the window, and he has learned that the very hardest way. I mean, I think around year 12 to 15 in our marriage, he got it. Like, okay, I'm not gonna try and put Muffy there. It like took a long time. And now what we do, because we've married so many years, I sit on the window, he sits on the aisle, and then someone sits between us and we're happy. So because he loves aisle seats. So, and I love the window seat. So that's kind of how we split the difference. So, it gets better the more you travel together because your partner really can start to read the room of what you want. The other thing when we first started traveling years and years ago, he would take us on the most convoluted, not direct, the most convoluted flight paths that would take like over 24 hours to get somewhere if we're going to Asia or something. It was absolutely crazy. And like, we just had to learn the hard way. I mean, you do learn these things the hard way. And he also learned to get really savvy with the use of points and everything. But it's just interesting. um, what I don't like is when people are in the middle seat, and I know the middle seat sucks, but like when they kind of are falling asleep and they kind of lean over onto you, it's like, come on, you've got to keep within your constraints there, right? Like, don't fall asleep on my shoulder. I don't know who you are. That's just like, I don't like that. Um, or like if someone's sitting in the middle seat and they're like thumping their leg, like they shake their legs anxiously. I just want to put my hand on their leg and be like, stop it. That happened actually going from San Diego to Seattle. There was like a, yeah, probably like an 18 to 20-year-old sitting between RK and I. And I was, of course, at the window. So it was her right leg. She just kept shaking it violently the whole time, like shaking the whole thing. And I'm like, I just want to put my hand and be like, you need to see a therapist. Like, stop shaking the leg. Come on. Oh, she also did another taboo thing. She opened like food that was really smelly to eat that she bought at the airport. That's like the worst. It's like, eat that before you get on the plane or after. Don't eat it on the plane. I'm sorry. I'm just like, that's just gross. I just can't take it. Or eat something non-smelly. Bring your own food on the board. Don't bring anything that smells. You can tell I'm a person who just kind of keeps to myself, very contained. I don't ever lean up against anybody. I don't shake any part of my body. I don't eat smelly stuff. I don't disturb anyone unless I have to get up to go to the bathroom. Uh, oh, that's another thing. I don't like going to the bathroom on planes because everybody's using that bathroom and there's lots of different people using the bathroom. It's so gross by the end. If I have to use the bathroom, I go immediately. So I'm one of the first people to use the bathroom. And then after that, I just try and hold it so badly because I cannot stand the thought of all the people who've been on that plane and using that bathroom. So, but pleasantly surprised when I came back from Amsterdam in December, I had to go to the bathroom and it was a long flight. And it was probably like maybe 3/4 of the flight was done. So I was standing outside the bathroom and like the person was not getting out of there. And I was like, oh my God, they're having like this massive bathroom incident in there. And I'm going to just have to deal with it. It's probably some big gross guy. And my mind was just going ballistic because I hate that. But I really did need to use the bathroom. So I just sat there. I just waited. I just stood there and I waited and I waited and I waited. You know what? Who came out of that bathroom? It was the stewardess. She had just cleaned it. I was like, yeah. So happy. I walked in. That bathroom, was 3/4 of the flight was done. She must have cleaned it like the dickens. It was spotless. I was so happy. So sometimes you just hit her just right like that. I have to say, I do love train travel. Didn't do much on the West Coast, but over here when I go to DC or Philadelphia, even Boston, but more for me, Philadelphia and DC, I just love getting on the train. First off, the traffic is absolutely terrible. Um, and so like, who wants to sit in that? But I love to get on a train and like, I think to go to DC, it's like maybe 3 hours or so, maybe three. I take the Acela, so it's the shorter one, and just pull out my, music and whatever I'm working on and just enjoy that time. I think you also like that too, but I just love train travel. There was an Acela though that I was on, a couple years ago. So that's the fast train back, like I said, and it was going so slow. It was having issues in one of the cars with electricity. So basically, we're ground to a halt, and we were really, really like the regular Amtrak was like passing us by. People were so unhappy because you pay more for the quick Acela train. I mean, I think everybody wrote Amtrak and got like a voucher of some amount back for that. I'm sure I did. I think I did for sure. But that's awful. When you're on the fast train and they come into issues and you see the slow train passing you by, yeah, that's not good. But I love train travel. I just think I was just saying to RK, I'm like, oh, we get older and we're doing some more traveling. I want to go like on a luxury like the Orient Express or one of these trains. We've never done that before, and it just feels so old-timey, like from a different world. But I think I'd really enjoy seeing whatever I was gonna see by train and like have a sleeper car. Oh, the one place I did do a lot of train travel was in India. Now, nothing is efficient in India, but the trains. The trains are super, super efficient. They run on time. You can bet it. So if it says it's going at 11:02, be there by 11:02 or you are going to miss it. And it was actually very clean, for the overnight trains, because I did take a lot of overnight trains. They had clean sheets. They had, food service. I mean, Indian food service, but food service, everyone kind of makes friends because you're all bunking together, like whatever, when I was in, like I met all these people. Um, yeah, I just really, I have the fondest memories of doing train travel in India for sure. It's a funny story that I have with trains. I was in India. I was coming back. It's a funny story. I was coming back from being up in the hill stations, like of Darjeeling and Kalimpong and Gangtok. That's like a circuit people do. I came back to Siliguri, it was called, and then from Siliguri, took the train down to Calcutta. And in Calcutta, it's a very big city. I was super worried, like what I was going to do because I had a whole day in Calcutta, and then I had to get to the other train station. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my day? And like, how am I going to get from the one train station to the other? So I was just like talking to my train mates again and again and again about this. I was very anxious, didn't know what I was going to do. So when I was getting off the train the next morning, this guy who was one of my train mates, he's like a middle-aged gentleman. He says, look, I know what you're going to do. You're going to come with me. I'm going to get dropped off at my office. And I'm going to give you my car and driver for the day. He'll take you and do whatever you want. And then he'll take you to the other train station tonight so you can get on and go back to Orissa where I was going for a wedding. And I'm like, what, really? And he's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay. So that's exactly what I did. Later on, when I told people that story, they were like, you just went with a complete stranger in Calcutta? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And I said, thank God he got dropped off. And I had the guy for the whole day. He took me everywhere with this other friend I had met. And then he dropped me off at the train station that night. It was the easiest thing ever. Could have gone real bad though, Habs. It could have gone real bad. But, I just think it's interesting who you meet on trains. And, I guess my angels were with me. So I have really fond memories of train travel in India. I mean, I could speak all the livelong day about cars, although I don't really drive anymore, because we basically take the path into New York City. I drive a little bit, like to my family's houses and nearby, or to our cousin's house in Maryland. And I love to drive my car. I love to drive. So I really enjoy it. When I do drive, RK is very generous and lets me drive. I think I will give it up to him if I'm tired, but I love to drive. I think I'm a good driver, although I would say I'm an aggressive driver, and I'll always, I always am talking to myself and like wondering like, why are these idiots on the road, and like what's happening here and what's going on, and come on, get out of the way. I mean, luckily New Jersey drivers are very, very aggressive, like East Coast drivers compared to like the West Coast or even the Midwest. So it kind of suits my style actually driving out here. But I'll never forget thinking to myself when RK was actually driving one time, I was like, gosh, he never like yells or talks aloud about anybody. I'm like, gosh, RK, when you're driving, it's like all the other drivers are like really good, like makes sense and like don't do anything crazy. And he's like, no. He goes, that's the same. It's how I deal with it. I'm like, really? I think he's right. I don't think that drivers have changed. I think we changed who was driving our car, and that's why the dialogue stopped, because he is a lot different of a driver than me, much more patient, goes the speed limit, all the things. Anyway, that's just the tip of the iceberg with cars. How about you, Habs? What do you think of planes, trains, and automobiles?
Planes, trains, and automobile? Do you know what that's from? I didn't say it very well, but remember in 16 Candles, like Long Duck Dong is like passed out on the grass from partying too hard. The grandparents are like, I don't know, they're housing him like in the US and he's like, automobile? I had to say that. Well, there's also bus travel too. Yeah, I mean, I love plane travel. I do really love train travel. And driving now has mixed reviews for me. I'll explain in a little bit. But yeah, the plane, I'm actually a nervous flyer. I always have been. I mean, at least since I was an adult. I have a very strong sense of motion. And so I can feel when like the plane moves slightly to like dips to the left or the like, I feel everything. And this goes way back to, and we haven't even talked about this, but sailing, I guess that's a form of travel, right? But when I was younger, I could just tell if like the boat like lurched slightly to one side or the other. I mean, now I love it, but at the time it was very scary. So my favorite time of traveling is at night because I can't see outside. Isn't that funny? You have to see outside just to like not be, not feel ill. But I love flying at night because it's dark and I can't see and I can't, I can feel, but I feel like I'm just like in a tunnel of darkness and I'm moving, but I can't really relate it to like what's going on outside. Um, and I also like traveling at night because it's quieter in general. I actually really like red eyes. I used to do them all the time when I flew from California to the East Coast. My husband does not like red eyes, but I was able to adjust and figure out how to get in like sleep because I don't really sleep on planes. As much as I'd like to, I'm so jealous of those people who like just fall asleep as we take off and wake up before we land. I so wish that was me, but it's not. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have a preference. I mean, I like the aisle because I can get up and, move around as much as I want because I don't like disturbing people. Um, but the window can have certain advantages. I have to say with a family, like plane travel is just like so much different. I mean, there's 4 of us. So ultimately, one adult is sitting by themselves. And I'm usually sitting in the middle seat while my girls are either like T is always on the aisle and J is by the window, or sometimes we mix it up 2 and 2, but it's not quite as much fun. I like going to the airport early. I like hanging out, going to a restaurant, having a couple drinks. I loved it when I was traveling for business and just meeting different people or just being by myself. I mean, there's a kind of freedom about it. And I remember the first time I traveled on an airplane after I had kids. And I was at the airport super early and I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing, right? I do love airports as well. My youngest, Jay, also really loves airports, just the whole environment. It's like moving, people are going places. There's so much to observe. Oh, but traveling with a family can be, not as satisfying, to be honest. And A and I, honestly, I prefer not to travel with him. I know that sounds awful, but or at least sit in a different section of the plane. I remember one time we were flying to Alaska, and the second leg, I got sat up front and he was in the back. And I ordered a glass of red wine. And oh my God, they brought me like the biggest glass of red wine ever. But I was by myself. It was quiet. I just sipped on my wine. It was lovely. A tends to be a little bit of an anxious flyer as well, or just traveler. Um, except maybe on trains. I'm not sure. But it's not that he's anxious, like he's scared of it. He just, it's just like so much work for him. And, he sometimes does get air sick or car sick and he can't sleep. He just doesn't like it. He's not comfortable. And I'm just like, okay, as much as I get anxious about planes, I still know that, like, okay, I'm here, I'm trapped, not trapped, but I can't go anywhere. There's nothing I can do. So you just got to go with it and like enjoy it as much as you can. And I do really enjoy it. Uh, yeah, but when things don't go well, they really don't. I remember we were in Colombia and we boarded the plane, and then they said that there was some part that needed to be fixed and they weren't sure if they were going to be able to get it. So we sat on the plane for a bunch of hours and they were like, well, people can get off if they want, but then they can't get back on. So then we sat more, and then they actually took everybody off the plane and we sat some more. They brought us back on the plane and they're like, yeah, we can't fly tonight. And they had to put us up in a hotel. It was horrendous. Let me say that kind of stuff. I just like, let's be a little bit more efficient. I know that it's a business. They're trying to move people as quickly as possible and they don't want to do that kind of thing. But at the same time, it doesn't it doesn't buy any goodwill for sure. Or there was another time, actually, I was pregnant with T and I was traveling for work from California to Boston. And we had a layover in Texas, I think Dallas, or maybe Houston, actually. And I was like 6, 7 months pregnant with her. And it was snowing in Boston, and so they're like, "Oh, your plane's gonna be delayed for a while." So I was like, "Oh my God, I'm really hungry. I really want a hamburger." And so I had to go to a completely different wing. And if you've ever been to Houston, it's huge with multiple wings that are just massive. I think in comparison, maybe the only other place is like Atlanta, at least in terms of where I've traveled. Um, but I finally found this hamburger. I sat down, had my hamburger. Then I got up to look at the board and the plane had left. I was like, "Oh my God." Like there was no indication like that it was going anytime soon. In fact, they had said like 2 hours. So I got to the help counter and they were just like, yeah, but I was a really frequent flyer and stuff at that point in time. And so they put me up, but I was just like, are you kidding me? I mean, normally I never stray far away from the gate that I'm supposed to be boarding on just because, but like that really, I mean, it was not happening. And yet somehow it happened. So, in terms of like what seat I sit in, middle, aisle, or window, the thing that really bothers me is when there's like, because I'm smaller, when there's some like kind of big, broad shouldered guy and he's like overtaking the armrest that should be mine. I think there's armrest etiquette, and when you're in the middle, you have a certain, you should be able to have both sides and the other people already have a side. So I don't know. There is etiquette there. And it annoys me when people don't follow it or they're encroaching in my space. I hear you on that part. I agree. The shaking of the leg, it so bothers me in any situation, not even on a plane, but even like in a meeting or anywhere. The shaking of a leg is just so distracting. I can't focus. And like you, I just want to put my hand out and be like, stop. So it's funny, like all these different things, like the smelly food, totally with you. I can't really eat very much when I travel. I just like my stomach is just not, and as a family, we don't either. We definitely try and fly direct as much as possible, like always. And we always check our bags. I know a lot of people are like anti that and never check their bags. but I'm full on check my bag. I don't want to be wandering around in the airport with a huge bag and all this stuff. So that's just me. I do have to tell you one funny story, and not about me, but one time my brother-in-law was on a plane, and I guess the guy behind him took off his shoes and had bare feet. And the shoe, I don't know what happened exactly, but my brother-in-law, like the shoe came out the other side. And so my brother-in-law just took the shoe and like put it in his bag. This guy was like, the guy that had taken off his shoes was like some business guy. So when they landed, the guy was like, anybody see my shoe? My shoe. And so my brother-in-law walked off the plane while this guy who had to, I think, go to a meeting was like shoeless by one shoe, like footless on one. What is that? I don't know, but he only had one shoe. So I thought that was like, I mean, he kind of deserved it, you know? I do love train travel. And yes, when I lived in DC and I was dating A, who was in New Jersey, I took the train back and forth a lot. I mean, my family was in New Jersey, so I sometimes took the train, but when I was dating him, I definitely was on that train, maybe like not every other weekend, but pretty often. And I just love it. It's just so easy. And you're right, the traffic on that East Corridor is horrific, that it's just so less stressful to be on the train. Now, when I was younger, living in DC, like right out of college, and I had to travel like during holidays, the trains could sometimes be so packed. You couldn't even find a seat and you had nowhere to put your bag. I don't think that happens as much anymore, but there were times where it wasn't so much fun having to travel by train. But generally speaking, I love it. And I think it is based on your location. Like on the West Coast, they just doesn't seem like there's many trains, but like train travel in Europe. And well, I was surprised to hear that train travel in India is very good. That's amazing. I learn something new every day. I do remember, yeah, I love that idea of the Orient Express. I would love to do that too. A and I actually traveled from London to France on the Channel when it was relatively new, and that was so much fun. I love that. Um, and actually, when I was in Africa, I was in Kenya in college doing a program, and we had to travel overnight. I'd never done an overnight travel on a train. And it was so much fun, like, so easy to fall asleep because the gentle rocking of the train, and we all went to dinner, like it's just, I don't know, it's just such a unique experience. Hubby, your story about the train travel in India and meeting up with that guy who offered you the car service. I mean, sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? I mean, it worked out well, but upon retrospect, I don't know. Have you ever seen that movie Euro Trip? It's super silly but fun. And it's a bunch of kids that have graduated from high school, and there's a whole bunch of different stories, but they're traveling on this train, and this English guy, I don't know if he's English or something else, but he comes on the train and he's super friendly. And every time, like they're sharing like a cabin and, like a sleeper cabin. And every time they go through like a dark tunnel, and they come out on the other side, he's like groping one of the boys. Like, and so it's just this whole funny thing. You have to watch it if you have it. Again, it's super silly, but it's intended to be super silly. And there's a great scene about the Vatican, which just, reminded me of because of the recent election of Pope Leo, and a scene in this movie. I just highly recommend it. Uh, yeah, I, I love to drive. I do. I have to say, I really love driving stick. Um, my first car, which I didn't get until I was 30, because I lived in DC and I didn't really need one, was a VW Bug, and it was stick, and I loved it. I just love the idea. Like, it's just so proactive. You're doing stuff. You're right, changing the speeds and the stick, and it's so engaging. But I don't have a stick anymore, and they don't make a lot of them. And the year that I bought my Mini, they were like, "Oh, we're not making sticks this year, but we might in a couple of years." I'm like, "Well, I can't wait a couple of years. I got to buy a car now, and I want a Mini Cooper." So it's not as much fun, I have to say. And I've driven so much. Like as a kid, we drove everywhere, long trips. And I drive to Maine often. And it's just, I no longer enjoy it. I want somebody else to do the work. I want to relax. Yeah, I wish I did. I wish I had a stick. Maybe someday again. I've always wanted an old VW Bug. Has to be pale yellow with a white interior. And it has to be a convertible. And I want to be that old lady bombing around town in my little yellow Beetle. Not the new ones, the old ones. So that is a dream of mine. I too am aggressive. I like to call it proactive. But yeah, I also yell and scream and point out the faults of everybody else. Well, at the same time, acknowledging that I make mistakes as well. And I am not the perfect driver, but I do love to drive. I think I'm pretty good at it, but I can be a little bit Speedy Gonzalez. Now, I'll leave you with this. I mean, bus travel. I think that's my least favorite form of traveling. I once took a Greyhound bus from Springfield, Ohio to Springfield, Massachusetts to visit a boy that I was dating, but we broke up after the trip. Oh my God, 24 hours on a Greyhound bus. Ugh. I mean, buses in general, not a big fan. What about you, Muffy? Do you like bus travel? Boat travel?
Yeah, it's Muffy. So funny about the bus travel. I did so much Greyhound bus travel at Wittenberg for seeing my boyfriend at that time, GK, who was going to University of Louisville. And that was probably between Springfield, Ohio and Louisville, Kentucky, like a 3.5 hour Greyhound bus ride. I had so many Greyhound bus rides that I actually wrote a collection of short stories called Tales, Tales, of a Greyhound. Because I had so many wacky things happen. And that was like, the early 90s, 90, 91, 92. It's just the most crazy stuff. Like, for instance, just sitting there one time and a guy just pulls his penis out and starts peeing on the seat next to me. Yeah, that sort of stuff. It was just whacked. And I used to just take it all the time. I got my wallet stolen. I mean, I used to take these overnight Greyhounds or like late. So someone stole it, my wallet. I don't know how, but they found the wallet with all the cards and everything in it, my ID in the men's bathroom. And they called me. The cash was gone, but I did get the wallet back. But, like it was in the men's bathroom. I mean, like there were just so many stories. I can't remember all the stories I wrote about, but it was just so incredible. I had to write. I do not care for that type of bus travel, like Greyhound bus travel. But gosh, I've done a lot of bus travel internationally. Like when I was in India again, there were like buses that took you up to Darjeeling and Kalimpong, in the foothills of Everest, where Everest is, right? They're just did a lot of, we did a lot of bus travel in, I think, Turkey, between certain smaller cities. We've just done bus travel everywhere. And, sometimes when it's tourist buses, it's fine, right? Or, most of the time, it's different from the Greyhound experience. We did like a bus to go from Malaysia from Kuala Lumpur to Singapore. And that was like a luxury bus line where people commute on bus between the two, Singapore and Malaysia. And that was really good and comfortable. So some buses for me have been fine, but the Greyhound, like you were going for a boy for 24 hours, like I was very motivated to see my guy. So I was like, okay, this is what I have to do because I didn't have a car. But like looking back on it, it was actually horrific. I now look at Greyhound buses and I'm like, oh, I would never want to be on one of those again. For sure. I totally understand that. But, I am open to bus travel when we're traveling because I think that's just always been kind of a different kind of experience. Some good, not so good, but not like Greyhound. So those are my 2 cents on Greyhound. Bus travel and the tales of a Greyhound. I'm always writing, right? I always have to process through writing. So Yeah, I never got that little short story, those short stories published, but I should probably put them up on a blog or something because they were quite entertaining in their day, at least. Maybe it seems pretty innocent now. I don't know. I never thought about, traveling with kids on planes. The closest I ever came to was nannying for a family. Um, and they wanted to go to Turks and Caicos, and they wanted to fly me down and nanny their kids while they were on vacation. And a girlfriend that you know and I know decided to come with me. And they were okay with that for me to have a friend. It was odd that she'd want to come with me on a working spring break. But like she had like a lot of experience with kids and was like really, really motivated about kids. So the kids were totally melting down. There were the parents, and then there was me and my friend, and then there were the two kids. And the 3-year-old was having an absolute meltdown. And the mother didn't really know what to do. And quite frankly, even me as the nanny really didn't know what to do. This is why, I don't have kids. It was interesting you talking about kids on a plane. I'm like, yeah, I remember that. I just was like, what? So the friend, LH, she took the 3-year-old and put her on a lap. She was, I know what to do. I'm in charge. Shook the kid and had her on a lap, entertaining him, calming him. She did all that work. She wasn't getting paid for the week, but she was doing the nanny work. I mean, she loved kids. She was motivated by kids. So she was like totally in control of that situation. And NV was the mother's name, and myself, we're just like so grateful to her as I think about it. But I think she was on the aisle with the kid. Then there was me. Then there was the little boy who was like 8 years old. And then the parents were like, I think, up in first class. So it was something like that. Yeah. So that was my really only experience. The only other experience was my cat, who I brought across the country to stay with my parents for 6 weeks while I went, while we were moving. And I brought the cat out, and we had given her like an anti-anxiety med. And so she'd just sleep and be relaxed. And she ended up pooping in her carry case on the plane. Of course, it smelled. I was like, oh my God, this is like a kid crying on the plane. Everyone's looking at you like, do something. And then the lady said, the stewardess was like, you can't put, cat poop in these bags. You have to flush it down the toilet. So I was like, all this stuff waiting for the bumpiness to not happen on the plane so I could go to the bathroom and just put it down the toilet and clean her up and clean the carry. I was like crazy. Those are my two experiences of having either a child or like a pet that's like a child on a plane. And it was just like, ugh, I'm sorry, but it just was like, not for me. I'll just say that. Yeah. I don't know. I feel for parents. I think it's like a terrible situation. I'm not too judgy about it, but at all about the other. But for myself, I just don't want to be dealing with it. And I mean, maybe it's just because I am childless by choice, and I just decided like not to have that. And I just like, how do people deal with that? So, I know, but even my pet, it was tough when she did that, and she never poops like that. It was the anti-anxiety method, I think, loosened her bowels, and she did that. So anyway, it was just, so those are my two experiences of children on planes. Yeah, when it's gone bad on planes, it goes real bad. I agree with you on that one. Interesting about you liking stick shift. I never knew how to drive a stick shift ever. I only learned on automatic. My grandmother knew how to drive a stick shift because when she came of age, that's what you had to drive. So one time we had a car that was only stick shift and no one could drive it except her. I think my older brother E, he could, but he wasn't around, so she had to move the car. So she went out there and did it. I was just like incredible. Like you were talking about that being an old lady going around the town when you're like stick shift bug. Like that was what she looked just like that type of woman, right? Elderly woman just doing the stick thing in this little car. It was like a Mustang or something. It was just so funny to see her in that space. It actually really suited her. She knew how to gun it. I'll tell you that, which we'd be like, gun it, Granny, and she did. So I'm happy. I love to drive, even though I'm a very aggressive driver. And I hear you saying like, I'm not perfect. I am. I'm perfect. I totally think I am actually. Although there are many cops who have pulled me over for speeding that would say otherwise. So many times I'm driving and RK is sleeping and he's just like, and he's like, he'll wake up and be like, oh, you were speeding again. So like, this is happening in Hawaii, Colorado, like so many places. But no, I love to drive. I love to speed. I love my car. Yeah, like we're gonna go away for this weekend, and I'm just like gonna drive it. You know, he knows that too. When I get really tired, then I hand it over. But I'm hard pressed to because I don't drive very much around here. We basically take public transport these days in the city all the time. So when I get a chance to drive my car, I want to drive the car. Um, yeah, and I do remember Long Duck Dong and like planes, trains, and automobiles. And I always loved the movie. I think Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Wasn't there a movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, with I think it's Steve Martin and the other guy, and they're trying to get home or something, or he's trying to get home to his family. It's not Home Alone, but it's another one where the guy's trying to get home and he gets with this other guy and they're taking all these things to get to his house. And I don't know. I just like that. I like transport films and they're fun. Um, yeah, yeah. It's always, we're planning trips. It's always like got definitely a plane, usually cars, sometimes trains. When we were recently in Morocco, we took 4 trains, and RK thought that was going to be so like amazing and high speed. There was one that was high speed rail, but it wasn't so amazing. And the other ones were not that at all. So, you sort of have to like make these plans and just let go and see what happens. I feel sometimes like as I get older, it's harder and harder, but I still am grateful for planes, trains, and automobiles.
Muffy, what we wouldn't do for love, the Greyhound bus rides for our boyfriends. Yeah, I forgot that you took the Greyhound bus back and forth to see GK a lot. You were actually gone a lot from school now that I remember. But that's crazy. The guy peeing on the seat next to you and your wallet getting stolen. I mean, those are some crazy. The Greyhound is it's some kind of crazy adventure for sure. I mean, I was going to see my boyfriend. Well, he wasn't really my boyfriend anymore. I mean, he was kind of ghosting me, if you will, but I decided to like just take a bus from Ohio to Massachusetts, go right past the town that I grew up in, um, to see this guy, and then returned, kind of knowing it was over, and then it was just over. Yeah, kind of sad, but you do these things when you think you're in love. And maybe you are in love. Glad I didn't end up with that guy, to be honest. I just have to say. Uh, yeah. I agree with you. I think some bus tours and, generally speaking, I don't love the bus, but I remember I was in London and I was studying, I was doing a master's program, and I was with a couple of classmates, and the one really wanted to take the bus tour around London. And I always kind of poo-pooed that, like, oh, bus tour, what I like, that's going to be awful with all these random tourists. And, I went ahead and did it with them. And actually, it was really good. It was a nice way to see London when we only had a day because we were studying outside of London. Um, and it was really good. So, like, kind of opened my eyes to that kind of thing. If you're somewhere where you only have a certain amount of time, that's not such a bad option. Now, I have to say, when A and I have traveled, in the past and now, like pre-kids and with kids, he likes to take all the local transportation. Like, I remember we were skiing in Austria. We were staying in this hotel, and it was kind of organized by his company, but we had the evenings free to do whatever. And he and I would just get on, like, kind of the equivalent of like the metro in DC. And like one night we just took it all the way to the end. And then at the end, we turned around, got back on, and then we just like stopped and we ended up discovering this really fun bar. It kind of like, it took us not back in time, but back to New Jersey. Like it kind of reminded us of like a bar like on the Jersey Shore with like all these muscle men. They had all these like, big necklaces and chains around them. They weren't tough per se, but they were just trying to be something. It was so I want to say out of character because it's not what you think of when you're going to Austria. We ended up having a really good time and then taking our friends, the W's, to and a couple of other people on the trip back to the bar like before we left. So, like, I think it's just kind of, discovering, when you take local transportation, you immerse yourself in the culture, you get a better sense of it. So I really enjoy that. Yeah, traveling with kids. I mean, oh, your 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 story about your cat pooping and oh, that's so horrible. It reminds me of a time when we were living in California and I had tea and I had to travel a lot back to the East Coast and I would take her and then I would drop her off at my sister and brother-in-law's house. And so I took a lot of planes, like big ones, and then, we would have to hop on little ones. And, she was only a baby. And so, like, barely a toddler. And I would have to take a car seat. So imagine me, like, the mom by myself with the car seat, getting on a tiny plane. I remember one time, like, nobody would help you. And I would just have to, like, I would have to, take the car seat and leave the baby behind, like standing like at the front of the plane, take the car seat to where my seat was, my assignment was, and then go back and get her. Um, and like not even the flight attendants really helped. I mean, one time a flight attendant was like, is this standard airplane car seat, blah, 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 because you had to have a certain, and I was like, yes, it is. I'm like, don't bother me. Like, but like I was really doing a lot of the hefty lifting. I remember another time I was traveling by myself and I was so tired. It was the end of a business trip. I got on the plane and I was just like washed out. And there was a mom and a baby next to me, and the baby was crying. And I know the mom felt bad and she was doing the best she could. And I was like, look, it really doesn't bother me. Like, does it really? Like, I can just tune that out now. It does not bother me. But there are plenty of parents out there that don't do anything to take care of their kids when they're on a plane or even other places. I mean, I remember one instance. We were kind of at the front of the plane, and there was a mom and her two kids, and the kids were acting up. The mom completely ignored them. And, I was a mom, and there were several other moms and a couple of grandmothers around us. And we were just like, what is going on here? Like, you need to attend to your kids. Like, it was horrible. Like, I rarely call moms and dads out because most are really just trying. But A and I are very sensitive with our kids when we're on a plane, but they're actually really good for the most part. They're really, really good. And I've had people say that to me. So we were very worried when we moved back from California to New Jersey because Jay was only 5 weeks old and she was colicky. And like we were both afraid she was just going to cry and scream the whole time on the plane. So A actually went out and bought earplugs for everybody or that would be sitting around us. Now she ended up just sleeping in my arms and was really good. Maybe the movement helped her. I'm not sure. I loved your comment about your grandmother knowing how to or drive a stick shift. And you and your brother saying, got it, Granny. Got it, Granny. I can just visualize it. How hysterical. Yeah, maybe that'll be me someday with my grandchildren. Not going there yet. But I also do like films with transit. I think they tend to be action, adventure oriented, and they just, like travel brings out the realness in people, the way they really are. And I think it puts people to the test of what they can really handle and how they'll react. Yes, I love that movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It was actually with John Candy, who's passed, and Steve Martin. That was hysterical. But, you know, I don't know. It's interesting kind of, yeah, as you age, what you tolerate, what you don't. I mean, like I said earlier, I've just done a lot of driving trips, either to Maine or in my childhood, or actually after college, I went cross country with two friends, A and T, and no, actually A and L, sorry. Not that it matters, but we drove cross country in a VW van. And oh my God, the adventure we have. Now, first of all, this thing was a lemon. It broke down when we got to Mount Rushmore, but Elle's father had bought her the car and he agreed to fix it. Well, we ended up in this garage, like in the middle of nowhere, and with this owner and then helper who had a gun and was like, had been a convict. Anyways, that's only one of many stories we had. Some really funny, some not so funny. But I mean, we did a cross country trip around the United States. It was something I always wanted to do. My mom actually did it when she was younger, post college. And so I think that was kind of my inspiration. So it's kind of like a trip of a lifetime. I definitely don't regret and so happy I did. But man, we did that on a dime. I mean, we pulled together $300 each and then lasted pretty far into the trip. And we were on the road for 2 months. I still have a map of the United States with the stars of all the places that we stopped at. So yes, you never know what you're going to get when you travel in trains, planes, and automobiles, plus buses.
Hey, Habs, it's Muffy. Just want to take this last minute to say that is really impressive, your cross-country trip right after college. I remember you taking that, but I had no idea all that you covered on what, $900? I mean, that is super, super impressive, Habs. I was just thinking about plane travel. I guess that's probably my favorite travel. And thinking about my trip to Namibia, where we went to different camps, at these desert safaris, and the best and easiest way to travel was through, these private little airplanes. And they were just so charming. I'll never forget, just like they were able to fly really, really low. It was sort of like my out of Africa moment, when they go up in these planes and they, take on the landscape. I mean, we weren't like uncovered like they're on that movie, if anyone knows Out of Africa. But still, like, it was so incredible just to see the landscape, to see the animals. Oh my God. I think that's what we took like 4 of those or something in the country. A lot of them short hoppers, some of them a little bit longer, but just incredible. I mean, I think movement via transport can be incredible. Can also be like Tales of the Greyhound.
Thanks for listening to Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy, where we spill the overpriced airport tea, coffee, or let's just admit wine, on all things planes, trains, and automobiles. Remember that movie? This week, I reflect back on a legendary cross-country road trip in a VW van, complete with a breakdown just after leaving Mount Rushmore, an ex-convict at a garage, and no cell phones in sight, because it was that era. Muffy shares her trauma from flying with a cat who pooped mid-flight, and thanks to turbulence, she had to sit there, eyes watering, and fellow passengers watching her before she could hit the bathroom to remove the stench. We get into her wildest travel memories, from high-speed train crushes to questionable bus rides, made in the name of love, and all the weird, chaotic, beautiful moments that come from choosing movement over staying still. We've got hot takes on travel hacks, seat preferences, and why sometimes the journey really is the whole story. Follow us on Instagram at Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy. And stay tuned, because next week, we're talking meal planning. Sexy stuff, not.